there was a voice that could stop you cold for decades. It was excruciatingly pure, delicious, and rising. Janie Fricke was more than just another country singer, she was a gorgeous girl from Nashville. Her lovely harmony vocals won her 2 awards for Female Vocalist of the Year. Her music served as the melancholy soundtrack for millions of people. However, the company that helped her succeed also instructed her that she was not allowed to discuss the suffering, the sacrifices, or the regulations she was never allowed to break. At 84, Janie is finally speaking the truth. Her words have the power to permanently alter our memories of her. Before becoming well known in the country music industry, Janie Fricke was merely a girl with a loud voice. Janie was born in South Whitley, Indiana, on December 19, 1947. She recalls playing the guitar her dad got her, singing in the church choir, and joining her mom in singing while they worked on household chores. She had a modest yet musically rich upbringing in a tiny town. Her family, friends, and teachers all sensed something was amiss when they saw her. Her voice was not merely a singing voice. It rose. Following her passion, she enrolled at Indiana University to pursue a degree in music education. She developed her vocal control there, becoming one of the most accurate and adaptable vocalists in the industry. College, however, strengthened her resolve rather than diminished her ambition. Teaching music was not Janie's only goal. She hoped to experience it firsthand. After graduating from high school, she abandoned her aspirations and relocated to Nashville with the hopes of making a name for herself in the vast world of country music. Nashville did not exactly roll out the red carpet, though. Janie had to work in a studio to earn money, just like a lot of other young ladies before her. She performed as a background vocalist and in commercials and demos. Still, her voice began to transform things in the recording studio, out of sight. The producers referred to her as the secret weapon. She could sing in any style, mix like butter, and alter her pitch to fit any artists. Shortly after, she was selected to support some of the industry's top celebrities. Soon after, she was performing in chorus for Elvis Presley, Charlie Pride, Ronnie Millsap, and Crystal Gayle. Her voice could be heard everywhere, yet no one knew her name. Janie wasn't upset yet. The engineers and musicians who understood the truth about her realized that she was behind half of the singles that came out of Nashville in the 1970s, and she was just happy to be working. It wasn't thrilling. She wasn't on the stage. She was not receiving any honors. However, she was creating music that would appeal to an entire generation. Though not in the manner she had anticipated, Nashville did notice. More than her presence, they desired her voice. Her voice, not her tail. The time had finally arrived for her to be viewed from behind. When Johnny Duncan was starting to gain popularity as a country music artist in 1977, Janie was invited to provide backup vocals. This was not the first time she had done this, she had done it many times. Stranger was a sultry mid-tempo tune that required the ideal balance of joy and sorrow. Janie added atmosphere in addition to togetherness. Her voice was like a secret being whispered through the speakers, and Johnny could feel it all around him. When the music was played on the radio, an odd occurrence happened. The label mentioned the female singer, and radio stations began to ask, "Who is the female singer?" So did the viewers. For the first time, Janie's name was bold. The owner of the voice had emerged into the open. Nashville, which is constantly searching for ways to generate revenue, noticed cash signs. Suddenly she was offered a solo deal by the same company that had utilized her to aid others. Within a year after she joined with Columbia Records, her own songs became well known. But the shift wasn't simple. The record label had no idea how to market her. Was she too pretty? Insufficiently soft? Too safe? Although she sounded fantastic on the radio, she didn't seem like the type of person Nashville was seeking. Songs like "Down to My Last Broken Heart," "Please Help Me," "I'm Falling," and the haunting ballad, "It Ain't Easy Being Easy," made Janie famous and at the top of the charts because she put her heart and soul into them. Her music resonated with people because they were authentic. She wasn't ostentatious. She didn't say anything. Because she was authentic, people recognized her. Janie Fricke was more than just a backup vocalist in the early 1980s. The CMA and ACM awards for Female Vocalist of the Year went to her. She frequently appeared on TV and radio, on the biggest stages in the nation, and alongside the top personalities in the industry. There were rules for the success, though. Now, the business world that had previously ignored her attempted to transform her into something different. Supervisors desired a more aggressive appearance. Producers put in a lot of effort to get hits around the world. They were asking the heartfelt singer to fit into a mold that didn't suit her. "You sing like a star, Janie," said one director at her when she refused to give in. "However, you appear to fit well in a church chair." It was a message, that wasn't a compliment. Women had to sell more than just their voices in Nashville. They needed to market a look. Because she was quiet and reserved, Janie didn't meet the description. She wore the outfits and posed for the glossy advertisements in an attempt to blend in, but every time she was altered, she felt less like herself. "They want a Barbie doll, but I'm just Janie from Indiana," she would explain to her pals. Nevertheless, she continued to smile because she was aware of the consequences for women who resisted too strongly. Their records were stored away, their performances were cancelled, and they were forgotten. She maintained her act's realism, emotion, and groundedness even when they advised her to go for the glamour. People referred to her as too plain or difficult because she refused to compromise. She refused to compromise on anything, even her identity and style. She had less influence over the situation the higher her star rose. Every photo session becomes a transaction. There were written topics to discuss for each interview. Even though it hurt, every music video made me smile. But they were more drawn to her hair than to the feeling, the lyrics, or the craftsmanship. She was given a platform in Nashville in the late 1980s, but she was instructed to give up everything that had brought her there. There was a cost associated with each standing ovation. Heartbreak in the wings, goals postponed, and love lost. Randy Jackson, a bassist and another musician who was not a major celebrity but understood what it was like to work long hours, constantly tour, and be under a lot of pressure, married Janie in 1981. Initially, they collaborated. On the road, however, life never stops. Janie's business was booming at the time, but every new hit came with additional work, a move, or a week away from home. They were close at initially, but eventually the stress caused them to drift apart, and their arrangements seemed to have no end in sight. She never discussed it in public, but what truly crushed her heart was what they lost. Janie suffered a number of losses throughout those years, many of which were personal tragedies. She had always dreamed of being a mother, juggling family and music, and one day rocking a baby rather than an arena. However, when hope appeared, it always seemed to disappear. Music City could not afford to be depressed. There isn't time for recovery. The performance must continue. In the changing rooms, she would weep by herself before wiping her eyes and taking the stage. Nobody was aware. She didn't since they couldn't afford to. One thing was certain for women working in the field, they had to hide their suffering or it would be turned against them. You were risky for displaying too much emotion. When I requested time off, you weren't steady. Janie poured all of her emotions, including perplexity, rage, and sadness, into her songs after concealing them. Unaware of the truth of her depressing songs about broken hearts, fans wept along with her. But there were fissures. Her acquaintances observed that she grew more cautious and reserved. The glimmer dimmed behind the curtain. There wasn't a major news story or a tabloid catastrophe when her marriage dissolved. She was left alone with her memories and her music after a silent separation. Nashville commended her hard work, ability, and grace. The fact that she remained silent, however, was what they truly appreciated about her. They appreciated her willingness to endure silent suffering for the sake of the brand. Janie Fricke's name used to be associated with beauty, emotion, and flawless singing when the 1990s rolled around. However, being a legend may easily turn into a problem in a field that is obsessed with shiny new things. Country music underwent adjustments. The new conservative wave was being replaced by younger people and smoother sounds. Garth Brooks had lost his mind. The fame of Shania Twain was growing. The genre's appearance and sound were rapidly evolving. Janie suddenly stopped receiving calls. Some radio stations used to play her a lot, but these days they don't even acknowledge her. The chart performance of her most recent songs was poor. Her employer began reducing promotions after they realized what was happening. It wasn't intentional, but the voice that had filled stadiums was rapidly disappearing into the background. She was the same. Her voice was still powerful. She still sung her songs effortlessly and with a sad honesty. However, Janie was no longer regarded as significant in Nashville, where youth was once again valued. The irony was cruel. For years, she had altered the company's sound, but now she was being forgotten. There was a feeling of apathy, but no drama or controversy. Where her name used to appear on billboards, she would see that it was no longer there. Instead, artists half her age who had twice as much money to spend on advertisements had taken its place. Her songs were being categorized as classic country and promoted on late-night radio. It seemed as though her career was coming to an end, but no one in the industry had the guts to tell her so. One team member even remarked, "We love Janie, but she's not what we're playing now." The most painful things weren't the congested phone lines or the decline in revenue. It was the sensation of being discarded, as if all the sacrifices she had made and the time and effort she had invested in her singing would be in vain if she wasn't the right fit. Nashville blew her off like a one-hit wonder, even though it used to promise to offer her everything. Janie maintained her composure. She remained calm. She did not plead for another opportunity. She continued to sing in smaller venues, local festivals, and neighborhood theaters. That's because she never truly pursued fame. Music was her goal. However, the machine she powered became so silent that it was intolerable after the major events ceased. Not only had Nashville disregarded her, it had altered the narrative to exclude her. Perhaps Janie could have gone. She had the option to accept that her time had come and gone and let the disappointment of being rejected consume her. But that was never her nature. Janie didn't need permission to do what she liked. She returned to what had always sustained her: genuine connections, genuine music, and genuine people. This came after her name had been lost on the radio and the major record labels had moved on. In towns where her voice was still recognizable, she began performing at little theaters, county fairs, and regional gatherings. Tens of thousands of people were still there, although their numbers had diminished. Parents who grew up enjoying her music took their children, and occasionally even their grandchildren, to see her live. Janie always gave it her all for them. No pride. Don't be upset. Thank you very much. She regained control of her craft in ways Nashville had never allowed. When she launched her own label in the early 2000s, she gained creative freedom and master recordings for the first time. This gave her the freedom to re-record her hits whenever she wanted. She released acoustic versions of her most well-known songs, Christmas records, and gospel albums. Without corporate interference, she rediscovers the delight of creating work for enjoyment rather than chart success. In addition, she began instructing young female artists, which she had never had before. To them, she was more than a story. In a field that still struggled to value women, she was a fighter, a teacher, and a wise voice. Janie discussed the commercial aspects of music, the dangers of celebrity, and the significance of remaining loyal to oneself despite attempts by others to alter one's identity. She had no intention of making a spectacular comeback. She had no interest in the news. Her right to be heard in her own way was something she was reclaiming. Gradually, a silent restoration started to occur. Legacy stations began to play her tunes once more. Because they wanted to learn more about the woman whose influence had been disregarded but never truly diminished, they wanted to speak with her. People stood for more than just the tunes when she took the stage. They represented her power. Because even when her career was damaged, her heart was crushed, or a moment was lost, Janie Fricke had never given up. She never stopped singing. Everyone started listening again all of a sudden, not because she met their expectations but rather because she broke them, note by note. Not much attention or dramatic news coverage was given to it. After one of her few solo performances in Texas, Janie was asked by a reporter, looking back, "What does country music mean to you?" She had been asked that question hundreds of times before. This time, Janie stopped. She had a gleam in her eyes. For the first time in her career, she did not restrict her response. She said, "It means everything," in a voice that was broken. Her words, "and it took everything," came after she inhaled deeply. She talked about the losses she was told to keep hidden, including the marriage that gradually fell apart due to traveling and being alone, and how it felt to be seen when someone told her to change the way she looked for the first time. There was silence in the room before everything fell apart. Anger, grief, and the pain of being forgotten that had been hidden for decades came out in waves. "I forgot who I was. They taught me how to laugh, walk, and dress. I followed instructions, and each time I did, I went for a short time." She described instances when she was traveling and felt that the cost of fame was too high, crying herself to sleep in hotel rooms while clutching her phone. She claimed that no one in the industry spoke to her again after her chart positions dropped, and she whispered, "There was no goodbye. One day I was named Voice of the Year, and the next day I wasn't there." The tears didn't fall quickly, they came slowly and wouldn't stop. Janie wasn't seeking sympathy. She didn't feel angry, she was simply exhausted from sharing a story that no one had ever asked to hear in its entirety. "They told me I was too quiet, too plain, and too soft. But I really meant every word in my songs. They were about real pain and love." She told him that sometimes she wanted to give up permanently, particularly in the 1990s, when the silence of the industry sounded louder than any applause. "But something inside me wouldn't quit. I couldn't give up because the only thing they couldn't take from me was the music." The interviewer didn't interrupt, and that day they captured not just a conversation, but the unraveling of decades. A statement that was suppressed for too long, a meeting with the machine that made and broke her, and at the age of 84, Janie Fricke finally allowed herself to feel sad about what she had lost, the opportunity to live her life on her own terms from the beginning. There was no breakdown to elicit sympathy, it was a significant step toward the truth. Nashville didn't win in the end, it attempted to change her, silence her, and erase her, but Janie Fricke is still here. Her voice is still heard in country music, even though she is 80 years old and not on the charts or walking the red carpet. Because Janie didn't let her anger take over, she turned her quiet into power, and when that business shut down, she opened her own. Labels stopped being interested, so she got her stock back. People forgot about her, but she sang anyway. If you listen closely to any depressed country song today, you can hear her spirit in the harmony. She is an inspiration to young female artists today because she demonstrates how to control your voice, show how you feel, and be strong without being loud. The reputation she left behind was stronger than any trophy. The songs, "It Ain't Easy Being Easy," "Tell Me a Lie," and "He's a Heartache," are just a handful of her hits. They are like mirrors for the millions of people who heard her words and felt seen. Despite the fact that the powerful people ignored her most of the time, her music always found people who needed it. The thing is, authenticity lasts longer than trends, gatekeepers can't stop it. Janie Fricke's work wasn't characterized by drama, scandal, or beginning over, rather, it was known for being strong, honest, and having a voice that wouldn't be silenced or used up. She now leads a quiet but proud life, acting occasionally, thinking a lot, and helping others whenever she can. The business world may forget, the facts may become less clear over time, but heroes like Janie Fricke remain the roots from which others grow. She doesn't want praise, she wants to be honest. After allowing others to shape her story for decades, she now fully owns it, with all of its pain, glory, losses, and victories. Nashville gave her a stage, but she made the show what it was, and no matter how hard it tried, it could never take her spirit. No matter how much dust settles or how many times the charts are reorganized, one thing will always remain the same. Making it through Nashville wasn't all that Janie Fricke accomplished. She persevered in strength, singing, and silence.